welcome to the F1 Rearview podcast, Series 1, Episode 9. We're back. We've had a couple of weeks off because, well, as you can probably see behind me, we're in a new place. And in fact, on the other side of that wall is Reese, and on the other side of that wall, there you go, is Ruth. We're not in the same room. We were going to originally do this all in one room, but we've still got technical difficulties, which is the reason we didn't do this last week. It turns out making a studio in not a studio is pretty difficult, but we're working it out. We're going to just do it like this week, and hopefully next week we'll have a proper good setup. But as always, of course, I am joined by the people on the other side of those walls. Reese Keeble is here.
Hello. Nice to be living with you.
Nice to be living with me, and Ruth Buchanan as well.
Hello, welcome back to another week of the podcast.
Another week of the podcast. Now, guys, let's be honest. Italy's just happened. Monza 2020. What a race. I mean, what are we going to say about that?
Bloody boring. Yeah. They need to up the game.
I'm
sick of F1. Every race is the same. They just go round in circles,
yeah.
And Hamilton always wins. It's
not good enough.
No, they need to up the game.
Italy was this week, but before Italy, we missed a week. We went to Belgium, and as I said, we've had 2 weeks off, and I think we possibly picked the worst 2 weeks off in terms of Formula One news because so much has happened in these past 2 weeks that I'm pretty sure all the listeners probably are already aware of. If you come to us for your news sources, don't. We're not a very reliable source. But we've had
half the audience has just clicked off now.
So please keep watching.
Yeah.
Please stay tuned. We are good.
We're going to discuss the points though. First one is a pretty big one, and that's all 10 teams now have signed off on Concord Agreement for 2022. It is now the new regulations. All the teams have basically said, yeah, we're happy with that. We'll stay in for another couple seasons. What's your reaction to that initially, Reece? Did you think all 10 would sign or what?
Yeah, cool, whatever. Yeah. I don't know, this is just news stories. We need to rattle through these because the good stuff happens when my boys achieve.
Okay.
So, come on.
Next one then, big one. Williams, the team, and I mean this has all happened now. 2 weeks ago this was just a dream. 2 weeks ago we didn't know this, but now we do. Williams sold their companies to their company, not singular, to a US investment company called, what is it? Doralton International.
Doralton, I think it's called.
Doralton.
Doritos.
And they obviously announced that after the Belgian Grand Prix that this weekend would be their last one. So now they've actually, the Williams family, in quite a sad situation, have now left the Formula One paddock. Claire has stepped away from management, and after a long time of managing, they've decided to. Reese didn't want his hat on anymore. He's taken it off.
It's so warm in this room.
And they have now appointed a new team principal temporarily for the rest of the season. Ruth, do you have any more information on that?
So, the Williams team was actually founded in 1977 by Sir Frank Williams. So it's very emotional this week that Claire has stepped down and left. But a nice little tidbit is that she was actually gifted a special present by the team, which was the nose and the front wing assembly of the 2014 car in honour of her favourite memory.
Aww.
Which is obviously the double podium at Abu Dhabi.
Well, it wasn't going to be from this season, was it?
Can you imagine?
What's he going to get the front wing of? Russell who finishes in 19th and Latifi who finishes in 20th. What a memory.
All right, what else do we have between these races? Formula One has announced that it's going to be formal races. It's pretty much completed the calendar now, I think. And there's an exciting turn of events. We're going to be going to Turkey for a race, which I'm really looking forward to. I love that circuit. And also we're going to get in 2 races at Bahrain, one of which will be using the outside circuit, their short circuit around the outside, which is meant to be, apparently, I've got it here, the fastest lap in F1 history. It will be sub 1 minute laps. So that'll be really interesting to see.
I concur.
He concurs. Ruth, anything on that?
I don't know what you want me to say.
You threw to me, right? I'm not being funny. Don't join BBC News. If they offer to give you a thing, don't. All right.
Damn.
We're rattling off these headlines. You finished off your point, and then you were like, "So what, guys?"
Well, it's a podcast, guys. I'm not telling the news. I'm discussing the news. Right. Okay. I think that's pretty much all the news that's big from before this weekend. So let's talk about Belgium. Let's have a little bit chat about the Belgium Grand Prix. We didn't get to properly do a podcast on it, and to be fair, I don't think it needed one. It was a pretty dull race. Can you remember it? Can you throw your minds back 2 weeks, guys?
I can just remember the race being 100% boring, and it was literally just Hamilton all the way. Just a nice Sunday drive for him. Easy peasy.
Reese is trying to remember really hard there.
I'm getting the word Hamilton.
Hamilton.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was start to finish, wasn't it? It wasn't even. It wasn't interesting.
It wasn't a fun race.
It
I
wasn't.
just got my belly button out, by the way. You're
nice.
welcome, everyone.
Little flash.
You're welcome.
Lovely.
Didn't realise I had a little itch. Decided to itch it. Got my belly button out.
Let's say that to our non-YouTube viewers, people that watch us over on Spotify or listen to us over on Spotify, etc. You've just missed a treat there. So make sure you come over and check us out on other platforms.
If you watch on YouTube, you can see my belly button.
Exactly.
Double
the views. Come on, rein them in. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that happened at the Belgian Grand Prix was a big crash that happened between Giovinazzi and Russell. And I think that was the most interesting part. And it was just Giovinazzi losing it, his wheel coming off and smashing into Russell. It looked a lot bigger than it was. I'll say that first off. Reese, we watched it with Reese, and it was a bit of a, from his point of view, he doesn't like big crashes.
I don't like crashes. Well, I do like crashes, obviously. It livens up the race. But like it doesn't. It's horrible. So when the camera cut to Russell's car just initially and said was like, "What's happened here?" And Russell's car's literally in the barrier, looking like absolute trash, just sat there smoking away. You think that he's not going to come out alive, really. I absolutely hate looking at that. I mean, thank you, Giovinazzi, for letting your wheel bob along the track. Like, come on. But yeah, it wasn't a pretty crash. Like I was concerned this week, but we'll get to that. But yeah, it's not. I don't like watching that. Tom's always going to me. They're fine. And I'm like, I can't watch. I feel sick. I can't watch.
I'm pretty sure after the big one this weekend, and again we'll get to that in a bit. You were shaking. You were actually shaking. Like
I thought I witnessed a death live. Like I don't like it. Really don't like it.
And so from that we went then to Italy. Belgium was very dull, and I think we would have struggled to squeeze a podcast out of that, even if we really wanted to. But we didn't. Yeah, so we shoved it in at the start of this one, but Italy was where it was really at. And let's have a good chat about Italy, because going into the weekend, there was two major things that were announced in terms of news. First one, which is a little interesting one, I want to hear your guys' opinions on this. Renault have decided that next year they don't want to be called Renault anymore, and they're going to be changing their name to Alpine F1. And Reese, I feel like you've got a bit of a strong opinion about this, so I'm going to hand over to you first to hear what you think about that.
So, if you saw an advert on TV, right, and it was for Alpine, would you think that it was a yogurt? Because I would. I think it was like a Greek-style yogurt called Alpine. Helps you get up in the morning, sort of thing. It nurtures you. Hate the name, right? Completely hate the name. They're going to change to blue. There's already technically 4 teams in F1, is there? Or 3? I think there's 3 teams in F1 that are using blue.
3.
So, me and Tom had a discussion during the race, which I'm willing to bring to this podcast now. What's going to happen? That's going to be a 4th team with blue, because, technically McLaren are a shade of blue. Not McLaren, sorry, Mercedes are a shade of blue. And then you've got Williams, who are also using blue. And then there is the blue car in Red Bull. I'm sure Toro Rosso used to use blue. They've got a bit of blue on the car now. Yeah. Because that's not black, that's blue. So it's like, the FIA are going to have to come in and say, well, we're going to have to designate colours. Like, if you're all going to pick blue, like, what's McLaren going to do next year? Release a blue car just to join in with the gang? You know what I mean? If the FIA, I get it, you've got a bright pink ones.
He's still going. I can hear him in the next row, but he's...
The blue one, what's the point? Oh, for God's sake. I am happy. What I was saying was, like, the FIA thing...
This is the most broken rant I've ever seen in the history of the F1 Rearview podcast. This is incredible. This is just... I don't know what's gone wrong. As you can tell, Reese is pretty annoyed at the fact that they're bringing in another blue car onto the grid. I think, personally, I enjoy the idea. I like it. I encourage them to do it. And I think it's just a bit of a marketing ploy so they can put Alonso back in a blue and white car, blue and yellow car, like he did in the Renault that he won in 2006. That's what I'm thinking. I reckon that's the only reason they're doing it. I think it's going to be a very different shade of blue to the rest of them, so I don't think I should be worried about that. I know Reese is quite upset. I know he's had a little paddy about it, but honestly, I encourage it. I think it's going to be good, and we should bring in more brands to the sport.
I'll be having a paddy about the Wi-Fi in this flat in a minute as well, because you are working perfect. Why am I breaking up when I'm in a mood?
It's because you're an apple. What are you saying, Ruth?
See, I don't think their main colour is going to be blue, which is why I don't think it'll be an issue. They're replacing the yellow and black because they're a French team, so they're using the French national colours, red, white and blue. So I have a feeling that it won't actually be a mostly blue car and will stand out much more than a lot of the other cars.
Well, I mean, all the cars that actually have blue on them are primarily not blue. There's not a car that is like painted straight like electric blue. The only cars that have blue are the Red Bull, which is like a very dark blue. It wouldn't really clash, I don't think. And Williams as well also use blue as their colour, but obviously the car is mainly white. Like there's a few, and Mercedes as well, but obviously their car is mainly black. So I think when you actually put them on track, if a car is mainly painted blue, I think it would stand out compared to the other teams that use blue accents more than anything, I think.
My point is there's a full colour spectrum out there. Why is everyone using blue?
It's a nice colour. There's probably some marketing guru somewhere. There's probably some bloke somewhere that is like, blue is the perfect colour to attract eyes.
Is Alonso stood in B&Q with a colour chart saying duck egg blue, please? You know what I mean? What's going on?
I think, I don't know, there's a lot of white cars on the grid too.
It's true.
When you think about it, there's Toro Rosso. Williams is mostly white, not blue.
So that's 2. Technically 4.
Haas?
Well, the blue
That's
one
right.
that your thing was, there's technically only 2. Mercedes is blue, but it looks a bit more green.
Yeah.
It's mostly just the Red Bull and...
Well, you know what?
I think your problem, Reese, you just don't like change. You don't like the idea that there's going to be another colour on the grid.
You can see it flying round. Why change it?
You've just learnt the team is Renault, and now they're changing it again. You're still calling them Lotus.
Right, you know what I'm actually really mad about? So I bought my mum this season's Renault shirt. Then Daniel Ricciardo decided to leave, so she doesn't even want to support them anymore. And then that shirt's going to be obsolete anyways, because it's going to be bright yellow, and there's not going to be a bright yellow team in F1. Issue. And I'm not happy. 45 quid. 45 quid that I won't get back. Ricciardo on the back with his number. I think it's 3. Don't quote me on that.
It is. Good job.
Thank you.
Quick trivia.
Yeah. On the back, Ricciardo 3. She's got it. She barely wears it as it is. She's not going to wear it when it's a bright blue team, is she?
Anyway, that's one of the stories covered this week. The other one, which I think was actually a bit more interesting to how it developed in the week, was one that we heard before Belgium. And I think we did talk about it at the end of the Spanish Grand Prix podcast. But one that actually only came into play in Italy, and that was the engine mode ban. And teams were told at the start of the weekend to pick an engine mode, and that's what they'd run throughout the whole weekend. And honestly, I think it made a bit of a difference to the running order. I mean, you look at the results of the race, and that's clear to see. Maybe it did, but I also think in the wrong way. I think it's Mercedes. It hasn't hurt at all. It's just who it was designed to hurt was Mercedes. I think it's teams like Red Bull have really suffered from this. What do you guys think?
I definitely agree with that. I think that the biggest takeaway was that if the race had not have happened how it had, it would have so easily been Mercedes flying around the track, everyone else lagging behind quite a lot. You know, I don't think it's done what they wanted it to, but I don't see how they can take it away and say, oh, well, actually, we were just trying it for one race. I think they're a bit stuck now in that they have to use it. Obviously, there's exceptions for specific circumstances, such as formation laps under safety car, laps that are purposely slow paced, but there's nothing for, you know, if you're having a race and then your engine is having such a hard time, you can't then change anything to help your driver out. I don't know.
Well, it was interesting during that race because I can't remember the driver now at all. However, they said for him to turn the engine down because the car was struggling.
Yeah.
Now,
Verstappen,
like
I think.
the commentators are very good at describing the new rule. So they said that they can turn it down as long as they say to the FIA immediately that they're turning it down. Before, I think they've got to say before turning it down that they're going to turn it down, and then they can turn it down as long as the engine was already struggling or something.
Yeah.
They can't just change it down to get an extra boost.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
I think they said when they do turn it down, they need to explain to the FIA why they've turned it down, and they cannot then turn it back up. I think they said. So
that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. So once you've adjusted it, that's kind of where you are. So if you're turning it down, it's not to save fuel or anything like that. It's only to preserve the durability of the engine. And as we said, it did make a bit of a difference. I think specifically in qualifying, I think we saw teams like McLaren, for example, doing much better than everyone else, and especially Red Bull. Red Bull seemed like they dropped. I think they finished P6 and P12. I don't know. It was a very bad qualifying from Red Bull. Hence why I'm not wearing the Red Bull merch today. I'm boycotting them. But
the McLaren.
It was a terrible weekend for Red Bull. And I think we can talk a bit later. But it was the qualifying that I think we should get onto first as a whole.
Can I quickly talk about practice?
Yeah,
because
practice, sure.
The surprise out of practice was, I'm sure it was P3, where Lando and Sainz finished third and second.
Yeah.
Lando third, Sainz second. That was the bit for me that sparked my little, hello, this is looking quite good.
Yeah.
Because they do normally run a quali sim in practice.
Yeah.
So from that, I was a bit like, you know what, this weekend's looking all right for us. I didn't expect to get what happened in the race, but what I'm saying is, I knew that sometimes we struggle for a top 10. I knew that we wouldn't be struggling this week.
Well, okay. Well, let's go on to qualifying then, because I think if there was one word, and I tweeted this actually. Here's a quick one. Plug the Twitter. Our Twitter this weekend was very active. I'm going to try and be more active in the races every weekend on Twitter. So make sure you go over and give us a follow at F1 Rearview, I think it is. At F1 Rearview, or search the F1 Rearview on Twitter and you'll find us. We had some great little banter on there. Reese was all over it with that. So thank you very much to Reese for live tweeting in the race. We did something in qualifying as well. And one of the tweets I sent out in qualifying was, there's one word to describe this session, and it's messy.
That's the Twitter. Has it flipped back around?
Yeah, at the F1 Rearview. There you go. That's the Twitter, at the F1 Rearview. Perfect. Thank you very much, Reese. Thanks for that. But yeah, one word I think to use to describe qualifying was messy, messy, messy. Ruth, I think you got a bit more detail on that, so could you just give us a little bit about that?
Just throughout the whole of qualifying, there was just constant issues, we were hearing so many team radios.
Yeah.
For example, Russell was very unhappy. He was swearing over his team radio. We don't really hear that from Russell quite a lot. There was also Vettel as well, who in Q1, he said, "What a mess, why did the Alphas have to overtake everyone?" And I think that just perfectly sums up exactly what happened through qualifying. It was just constantly a traffic jam of people overtaking and everything.
It's like what the commentators were saying. Like I do really like Crofty. That's why I always keep going back to him, as much as some people don't. But it's like what they were saying. They were saying that it's like qualifying should be more gentlemanly. And Button was saying this actually afterwards. He was saying, "I've never heard of overtaking in qualifying. You normally just wait your go, do your lap, and then go back in."
Yeah.
That's what qualifying's meant to be. Why were they all racing on the outlap?
I don't know.
I know I had this argument with you during the race, during qualifying, where I was saying, obviously they need to jostle for position. And I still agree with that. I agree that they should be allowed to overtake on the outlap because they need the position. However, it's still a bit that was awful. It's not like someone just trying to get past someone because they got a bit too slow in the outlap. That was horrible.
I think the issue with all of that overtaking is that they all have ample opportunity to go out, to put their time in, to come back in. They all release at the same time, and then they constantly have the same issue.
Yeah.
There's better ways to go about it than all going out at the same time and then overtaking each other.
During that race,
compromising each other.
You had cars going side by side down the pit lane. That's how you knew it was going to be messy.
Yeah.
When you got Ocon driving alongside his teammate going down the pit lane, you thought, that.
I think, and like this is an interesting point from Q1 as well. Like carrying on from that, there was a massive incident involving Gasly, Albon, Stroll, Sainz, Latifi, Grosjean, Perez, and Hamilton um, for driving unnecessarily slow. And this was after all of the overtaking had happened, and it was just an absolute mess on the track. But after that, obviously nothing happened from that, because how could they determine who was at fault or who was compromising each other?
They all got summoned to the steward's office to explain after qualifying, why were you going so slow?
Yeah.
And I'm sure they all went, oh, well, Lewis was going slow in front of me. Well, Carlos was going slow in front of me.
Exactly.
Well, you know what I mean? It was just...
He said, she said. Yeah.
Exactly.
No one was going to get a result out of that.
No.
However, it is good to see that the FIA are trying to clamp down on slow out laps, because slow out laps are absolutely ridiculous. And the amount of time that we see a slow out lap penalise essentially...
Yeah.
Why is it just my Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I think another interesting point from qualifying was that both of the Ferraris were out before Q3 for the first time since 1984.
What happened there? I mean, Ferrari this weekend is one to forget. Race and qualifying, it's meant to be their home Grand Prix. Obviously, I think this week's going to be more their home Grand Prix because it's actually at their home circuit. But in any normal F1 season, Monza is the Ferrari home Grand Prix. And I mean, when you don't even succeed there, it's embarrassing, isn't it?
Well, I saw a really nice tweet, and it was Sebastian. The tweet, like what the woman tweeted was, Sebastian Vettel loves F1. At the moment, F1 hates Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah.
And it's so true, because obviously he went out first, but he was stood on the last corner. He was stood on a I can't even say the corner's name. I know I can't say it, but he was stood on it, watching the cars all fly around, and it shows how much he loves the sport, and it makes you feel so sorry for him, and the fact that he's essentially underperforming.
I think it's definitely like rubbing salt in the wound, isn't it? He just is having such a bad time, and then both of them are out. The race, which we'll get onto later, also wasn't very good for them either. It's just constantly getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. I think, and like you say, Seb does love F1. There's a thing that came out this week as well that he's just bought Nigel Mansell's original Williams from his season in Williams. Sebastian does love the sport. He wouldn't buy a classic F1 car if he didn't. And I don't think it's even that he's a bad driver. I think he's just in a really tricky spot right now where the team he's at doesn't like him. He's not happy in that car. The car isn't that good in the first place. And maybe he is falling out of love with it in a very unfortunate way. I don't know. What do you think?
He's literally just waiting for that phone call now, Aston Martin Racing. I mean, it's going to happen. When's it going to happen? Who knows? But it's going to happen.
Is it?
And then that's it. Yeah, 100%. 1,000%. If you're going to launch this new team, you want, because it is technically a new team, even though it's taken over from Racing Point, you want to have what is he, four-time world champion?
Yeah.
You want to have a four-time world champion, the front of your team, the poster boy of that team. This season's a write-off for him, granted. However, if he's in a new car, they're designing that car around him, he's got to fly again, surely.
Well, Ted actually spoke about this on his notebook this week. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but right at the end he was talking about Seb and he's talking about Racing Point and saying that, a few weeks ago at the British Grand Prix, it sounded like that was going to be a done deal. Like they'd already got the contract signed, it was ready to go. But now, even if 5-6 weeks later, we've heard nothing still. Is that dead? Did they see Hulkenberg in the car and decide to go for Hulkenberg instead? Has Seb just struggled so much this season that it's kind of gone against him? I don't know. It just looks like it's kind of going against Seb now, and they haven't announced something yet, which is the weird thing for me.
I feel like it's more keeping it on the down low and wanting to make a grand announcement about it when the time's right. You know what I mean? Also,
the fact that Sergio Perez then was talking about he's in talks with other teams, but now Perez has been said, I'm not planning on moving. There's a lot of things around that's making me think maybe this is it for Seb. Maybe this is
right. So if you were a team owner, Tom, who would you pick, Perez or Vettel?
Great question. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Exactly. I mean, I would probably. It's a hard one, but I'd probably sway towards the four-time world champion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But is he still a 4-time world champion? Has he still got that mentality? I don't
Give
know.
him a season then. Give him a
Yeah.
season. See what happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Get someone back like Perez or your Hulkenbergs or something. You know?
I feel like Seb is one of our favourite talking points on this podcast. I feel like every week we come up with this point talking about him. What's he going to do? Because honestly, I think it is one of the biggest questions in F1 right now. I don't think there is any way he can go and be happy right now without
the drama.
Yeah.
It's just the drama.
Ferrari, it's a mess this season, isn't it? It's just a mess.
I think the final point would be, obviously Ferrari aren't having a very good time, but there's one team who we already touched on that is having a very, very, very good time, especially after the engine change, which would be Mercedes. They had the fastest lap in F1 history set by Lewis Hamilton, a 118.887. The
insane.
speed of that car to go 260 kilometers per hour and set that time is absolutely insane.
Yeah. I think the average speed on that lap in miles per hour was like 164 miles an hour. Imagine just going 164 miles an hour for 1 minute and 18 seconds. Like, that's insane. Not slowing down.
Afterwards in my Fiesta, Christ. You know what I mean? Like,
I think another point as well would be that Bottas wasn't even very far off that either.
Yeah.
Bottas was 0.069 off of Lewis's time. Just the absolute speed of those cars has not been hindered in any way by the changes.
I think Mercedes are in a position where, and it's fair, we saw it in the race actually, that we did see a weakness in that car, but they've designed that car to be at the front, performing as well as it possibly can be, but it needs to be at the front. And that's the issue. Even take away the engine modes, that car is still incredible at the front. But and I think we should get onto the race now. We'll talk a bit about the race. That Mercedes in the race did seem like it had a problem. Whilst Hamilton was at the front, he was bossing it. But Bottas had a really bad start, fell back to like P8, didn't he? And then from there, he was just struggling because that Mercedes cannot work well in traffic. And that is what the problem he found himself in.
I mean, I want to touch on first, going off that.
Yeah.
Like, hats off to Lando. What a start. I think that's the best F1, like the best start to an F1 race I think I've seen any driver have.
Yeah.
He jumped him. Like, Bottas is in the fastest car.
Yeah.
And he managed to jump him before, I think it was like the second corner or something.
Did he go from P6 to P3 or P4, P5 to P3?
It was P5.
P5.
Yeah.
Insane.
But what a start.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Bottas, it clearly wasn't his day. He wasn't having a good time with it. He was kind of a bit grumpy, you'd say, especially blaming it on a puncture. But like the start that Lando managed to have to be able to get from P5, P6 to third, absolutely incredible.
I think another point from the Bottas thing with the phantom puncture, he was absolutely convinced that he had a puncture.
Yeah.
He even said after the race, in the first lap, I had some contact. I actually thought I had a puncture. He had understeer through turn 6 and 7. The car was pulling to one side, so he was being cautious. But in actual fact, he didn't have anything.
No.
He didn't have a puncture at all.
It sounded to me like he was kind of looking for a scapegoat to explain his bad start. But I think to explain his bad start is, A, he got stuck in traffic and couldn't perform because the car was overheating straight away, and B, he just got a bad start. He didn't get that car off the line quick enough. That was the main problem, I think, for him there. It wasn't a puncture. Maybe there was a bit of contact, but there was no puncture because, I mean, he even got on the radio and said that, and then the team were like, nope, pressures are okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It's
a case of that he was wanting that scapegoat, and then we all looked at each other and we were like, yeah, there's contact, because we watched the replay. There was contact, obviously, with Albon. Was it Albon? There was contact with someone. I'm sure it was Albon.
Yeah, I believe it was Albon.
And we all looked at each other and we were like, come on, there was contact. Yeah, there was contact. There's nowhere near enough contact to like give a puncture.
No.
You know what I mean? It was like they literally just went. Whoop,
yeah.
Like that.
It was a very light. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was. It just went from bad to worse for Bottas from there. I think he went down to P8 and pretty much stayed there for the whole race, didn't he? Even with everything that went on around him, everything that went on in that race. Oh my God. He still just kind of sat there wasn't able to do anything. It was a very bad race for him. Definitely one to forget. I think
Yeah.
It was also a very bad race for Albon as well.
it was a very bad
And
race
Max.
for. I think
It
you
was
could.
both Red Bulls.
The top 3 teams. It was an absolute. It was terrible for all of them, wasn't it? Let's be honest.
Shambles.
I mean, Ferrari. Let's start with Ferrari. We've talked about how horrible it was in qualifying for them. Let's talk about how horrible it was for the race for them. Vettel had actually an all right start, I think, but then very quickly he was racing a Williams down the main straight, got to the end of the straight, and it looked like he just decided he didn't want to stop. And just went straight through the polystyrene barriers, didn't stop, and then got on the radio saying, yeah, my brake lines just exploded. What?
Yeah. I think instantly you saw the fire coming out as well, and everyone was just watching it like, this is unbelievable. How is that even exploded?
Yeah. There's one thing that you need as a racing driver, and that is brakes. And that's the one thing you want to be able to rely on having is reliable brakes, isn't it? I mean,
It was really weird to watch that though, because it was like he couldn't even be bothered. Caught myself on the swear word. Couldn't even be bothered to swerve in and out of the slalom. He just thought, you know what, straight through it all. Let's carry on.
well,
Let's
he
pretend like it didn't
he
happen.
couldn't slow down enough to get through the slalom. That was the problem. He just
It was
a hole in the wall,
It
mate.
was- I mean, it was a very funny tweet on the F1 Rearview Twitter about that. If you want to go check it out.
It was like he was playing Fall Guys, so then we had to jump through those doors.
All right, WTF1, whatever it is.
I mean, and then obviously Leclerc had that massive crash later on in the race, but I mean it was insane. But we'll come back to that in a little bit more. That was what really changed the whole race, I think, wasn't it? That crash.
I mean, talking about how bad Ferrari were, the fact that Charles Leclerc was racing Albon, you'd expect that to be around 4th or 5th. I mean, 3rd at a push. The fact, have I broke up? Am I still here?
You're still going.
Okay. The fact you were both just staring at me, and I was like, is it gone or not? And the fact that they were racing over 14th and 15th showed how bad of a weekend it was for the top 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Albon did have a particularly hard time this week. You know, he was tagged by Gasly at the start and missed the corner and had to go around. And then that made him drop down to P15, which was just a racing incident, but, unfortunate for him. But then he also had another hit between him and Grosjean.
Yeah.
And he got the 5-second penalty for that because he didn't leave enough space for Grosjean to get around him.
Yeah. That was a very interesting one, I thought, for Al. I don't know if it should have been watching it back, he didn't leave space, no. But at the same time, I don't know. Maybe it should have been. I just trying to defend Red Bull, I think. But
if Grosjean did that to Albon, you'd be fuming.
Maybe I would. I don't know.
I think things like that, you've just got to be completely objective with the rules.
Yeah.
The FIA have a rule. You have to leave enough space for a car to get round. Was there enough space? No.
No. Yeah.
That deserves a penalty,
I suppose
in my opinion.
I suppose it does. That kind of makes sense. Yeah. But I think, to be fair, up until that point, I was ready for a pretty boring race. I think it was at that point the only exciting thing that had happened was turn 1. Gasly had a little bit of a tag. The McLarens had a great start, but I was like, Hamilton's already away at the front. This is going to be a pretty boring race.
I had to say at the start, though, it was pretty boring with Hamilton at the front, but already in lap 1, it was a McLaren T3.
Absolutely,
that
yes.
That was interesting
true.
when you took Hamilton away from that.
Very true. But it wasn't until you took Hamilton away from that it got really exciting. And I think it was Kevin Magnussen. I put a tweet out of the race saying Kevin Magnussen should get driver of the day because he changed that race up completely. His car conked out, coming around parabolic around that final corner, which was, it was a corner to be looking for in this race. Came round that final corner, car conked out. He couldn't quite get it into the pit lane. Had to park up on the pit lane entry. And then Michael Massey had no choice but to close the pit lane. Only for 2 minutes later, Hamilton comes diving into the closed pit lane. And I don't even think the commentators quite knew what was happening, did they? They were a bit like, okay, Hamilton's in. Why is no one else coming? Why is no one else boxing the safety car? Oh,
well,
wait.
I feel like Crofty didn't help my nerves by going, Sainz hasn't come in.
Yeah.
Norris hasn't come in. And I was like, why aren't they pitting?
Yeah.
Why aren't they pitting? we have thrown away a 2-3 here because they haven't pitted. But then obviously it turned out 5 minutes later we learned that the pit lane was closed.
Yeah.
But it was very, as a McLaren fan, and I'm sure other McLaren fans can back me up, that was very awful to watch because I was like, I don't know what our strategist is thinking here.
Yeah.
But whatever he's thinking, he is very wrong.
Well, I think it started off with there was a car in front of Sainz, wasn't there, with Hamilton or something, and he didn't go in. And I kind of said, why is he not come in? And then the McLarens didn't come in, and I was like, hang on, what's happening here? Why is no one pitting? Because the McLaren team was in the pit lane expecting them. Then they didn't come in, and it was like, what? And then obviously, eventually, Crofty was like, oh, hang on, the pit lane's closed.
Cut to all the pit crew, and they were all just stood there like, and you got matey boy with a tyre like that, like, what do I do with it now? Like, I took it out of the blankets. Now, but he only knows 3 actions: take it out of the blanket, put it like that. That's all he knows, and then take the other one away. Like, he didn't know what to do now.
I think the important part of that as well is that Giovinazzi did actually go into the pits as well. Even though he was at the back, he saw everyone else stay out and still chose to go into the pit lane.
I wonder what was going through his mind then. He was like, hang on, why does no one else come in? I'm going to get loads of positions here. This is brilliant. What are they all doing? Like, he must have been really confused.
Just driving, like, life could be a dream, and just pulling it into the pit lane. Not a clue. He was probably zonked out of it.
Well, Ted said on the notebook that there was one person that noticed that the pit lane was closed, and that was someone right back at Brackley in the factory who kind of eventually said, oh, guys, we've done bad here. He's come into the pit lane. There was then that kind of limbo, wasn't there? Because that brought out the safety car, wasn't it? Magnussen being parked there brought out the safety car. Safety car came in. This was before we knew anything about the penalties and things. Safety car came in. We all got going again. And then Leclerc just had a massive shunt. And it was a huge crash from Leclerc into the tyre barrier at the outside of Parabolica, which then brought out the red flag. And so all the cars came... Oh, I've just punched my mic. Brought out the red flag, so all the cars had to come back into the pit lane. Because he had just absolutely just torn up the tyre barrier. That was a nasty shunt from Leclerc.
It was an absolutely insane crash. And I just remember watching it, and on the radio it was, does he have a puncture? Have his brakes failed?
Yeah.
You know, what's happened? And in the end, it was completely just that he'd lost control.
He just lost the back end, yeah.
He was going so fast, and he even said when he got out the car, it was a big crash, I'm sorry, I struggled with the balance.
Yeah.
You know, he knew it was his fault, but it was so lucky that he did get out of the car, and I think that's how you can tell that F1 safety has been taken so seriously.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
I think it's worth pointing out that he didn't just get out of the car. Man started doing the 200 metres.
He legged it. He was like, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, he was like...
I mean, if I'd have crashed my car like that...
Yeah. He was pretending like he just crashed into his neighbour.
Yeah, it's an insurance job.
The police were coming after him the way he was running away.
But he didn't want to get caught. He couldn't risk it.
No point on his license.
He was just legging it. It was a massive shunt, and I think what made it worse, to be fair, was normally with crashes like that, you see it on the replay after the red flags come out, but the camera cut to that camera angle so perfectly as he was skidding across the gravel. It wasn't a replay. We watched it live of him just banging into that wall. I think that made it worse, just the live impact of watching it happen. I don't know what happened there, but...
I was getting the lighter. I was lighting the candle already for him. I was like, there you go. You know what I mean? I wasn't happy on that.
I think after as well, it was insane to see how much damage was on that car. They couldn't even get it out. They had to rip the nose off and just at the end of the day be like, yeah,
they had it dangling, the nose was stuck, and then it all came out, and all the marshals like, oh Jesus, they started jumping back.
There was a tyre on fire. There was everything.
What would have topped that off was a marshal with a baseball bat saying, right, Michael, now trying to drop something down there like Pinata.
It was huge, and obviously it brought out the red flag. Like we said, the tyre barriers were absolutely destroyed. They had to restart the race to kind of rebuild the tyre barriers, And this is where it got interesting because the cars in front of the McLarens, Gasly, Perez, I don't know if there was some, Raikkonen, I think, and Giovinazzi.
And Stroll.
And
Stroll was
sorry,
at the
not
front as
Perez.
well.
Yeah, Stroll. You're right. I got them confused. Sorry. They hadn't pitted for tyres. They decided under the safety car not to come in. For some reason, I don't know why they decided that. It was a stupid decision, preliminary before the red flag. It was a really stupid decision. They could not have predicted that red flag coming. But the red flag came out, and obviously, this is one I want to debate with you. This is one I want to have a discussion with you about. When they come into the pit lane, they can switch tyres. And so Gasly, Perez, Giovinazzi, Raikkonen all got a fresh set of tyres that allowed them to go straight to the end without having to make a pit stop. Let's have a discussion about this. I want to know what your thoughts on this are. Do we think that should be allowed? Should red flags mean you can touch the car, you can kind of change a few bits on the car or not?
Absolutely not. No chance. No way. I feel like your pit stops are there for your tyre changes. Just because there's a red flag, it shouldn't mean that you can change anything on the car.
Mm.
Like, I completely disagree with any team doing that. One, it wrecked the race. I felt like it completely destroyed the race, the fact that people just changed tyres. And two, the graphics. Right, let's talk about them real quick. The graphics man didn't know what was going on with who's on what tyres. You know, it was saying that I think it was Stroll was racing Gasly, and they were both on hards.
Yeah.
No, one of them was on hards, and one of them was on softs, and that wasn't true.
No.
At all.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just absolutely hated it. I feel like it really affected the race because people got a free pit stop. You know how they say like in a safety car it's a free pit stop.
Yeah.
This was free and half extra free.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they're not losing any time. I feel like the rules need to really be looked at about that. And I'm sure that McLaren will be the first ones to go and say, how's this fair? Because they were the ones who did it properly throughout all of this. They were the ones who stuck to the rules, didn't go in when Lewis went in, like completely stuck to it. And I feel like they'll be the first ones to ask questions.
So you think the rule should be, as soon as there's a red flag, as soon as everything stops, it should just be a stop button on the race, nothing changes. Stop button, everyone's in the pit lane, fix what's broken on track, bring it back round onto the grid, go again. Nothing changes.
Red flag.
He's frozen. He's gone.
The car should come into the pit lane, sits there, drivers can get out, have a go scooters. But that shouldn't be touched by anyone at all.
Right. Okay.
See, I'm of a different opinion to you. I think they should be able to. Everyone's already at a huge disadvantage because of the red flag. Their tyres are cold, the engine has to be stopped and then restarted. You know, it's just, it depends how you look at it. I mean, all the drivers and all the teams have the exact same opportunity to change their tyres. Everyone, you know, well, the FIA, if they want to change parts, can change parts, things like that. As long as everyone has the same opportunity to do the same thing, then, I don't know, I think it should be allowed.
I think it would also be an issue with the red flag where, because everyone reforms on the grid and it's essentially a second race start, if some people have got tyres to go to the end already at that point and other people don't, their races are ruined as well. They're just going to go straight to the back because everyone's there.
How's it fair that the McLarens, and I'm sure, I don't know if I'm frozen or not now. I'm a frozen.
Yeah, you did.
How's it fair that technically the McLarens got 30 seconds added on to the race sort of thing? It's 30 seconds of pit stop.
Mm.
You know, they did stops. That's
He's frozen again.
People like, I just don't really think it's fair because you've got teams flying into the pits during the race. How can people get a free pit stop out of it?
Yeah, I mean, there is a few ways you can look at it. There's a couple different ways you can look at it. Either way, someone's going to lose out. If you don't make your tyre changes, that team is going to lose out completely. If you do make your tyre changes, another team's going to lose out. So either way, they've got to work out a way that this can be fair. And I don't know exactly which way that is. Maybe to be fair, I agree with Reese in the sense that red flag, nothing should be done to the cars unless it's like for safety. Unless there's like a damaged part, then that should be changed out. But in terms of everything else, no, I don't think tyres should be touched.
I feel like it should act like a safety car, but the pit lane's closed. You know what I mean? That's how I reckon it should happen. The cars should troot around the track, you know what I mean? Like they can't, but in hindsight, they should, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
I think,
I'm explaining it in a really bad way.
but then you could say the same thing about a team who pits and then a safety car comes out. That team has already pitted and lost that. And then
yeah, but at least when
the other
that's
people have
happening,
pitted.
at least when that's happening, the other team is still losing time. It's not as much time. It's like 15 seconds, not 30 seconds, but they're still losing time.
Yeah, yes and no. I don't know. When you change your tyres anyway, you're at a disadvantage to begin with anyway because your tyres haven't heated up, they haven't done anything.
Yeah,
your car's
you're at
more
a
likely
really
to slide
short-
around a track and everything. So
You're at a
I
very
don't know.
short disadvantage and then a very long advantage. The disadvantage is right at the start for the first lap. After that first lap's done, it's just full advantage.
Yeah.
Mm,
Maybe. I think it's definitely one that will be discussed for a while after this race, and maybe it will be something that gets changed. But during that red flag, there was something else that happened, and it was Lewis Hamilton and his scooter, and he loves his scooter. Our Louis, he scoots everywhere on it, and we saw him scooted off to the FIA to have a chat about the penalty that he was facing and try and argue with the fact that he didn't deserve a penalty because he didn't realise it was closed, yada, yada, yada. We saw very early on in the red flag that Giovinazzi was given this 10-second penalty, 10-second drive-through penalty for ignoring the red flag. I think there was a bit of anxiety from my end, at least, when Giovinazzi was given the penalty, but not Hamilton. And what do you guys think about that? I was worried that they were going to say that Hamilton didn't deserve it or something.
no, I think Hamilton was for sure in for a penalty. He knew it. The team knew it. He even asked on his radio multiple times whether he had a penalty or not.
Yeah.
He even said on the radio after he got given, I think it was after he had a penalty, but I'm not 100% sure. I think he didn't have it at this point. He said, I'm just trying to understand. There was no light on the entry to the pit lane.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines, when clearly we saw in a lot of replays that, the lights were to the left-hand side of him.
Yeah.
There was 2 lights, I think it was, that
Yeah.
had the crosses on. And he so clearly just either wasn't paying attention to them or wanted to gain an advantage by not doing it. But I think most importantly, he entered the pit lane 12 seconds after it had been closed.
Mm.
And just,
it was a tricky...
I don't understand how they couldn't have given him a penalty and given Giovinazzi a penalty. It's
100% it should have been a penalty, and it was a penalty. I think you make the mistake coming into a closed pit lane. Someone should have realised that's their job, isn't it? At the end of the day, if it's for everyone's safety that the FIA say this is closed, do not enter. There was lights on the left. The pit wall must have had some kind of light, and if it didn't, they need to work out why they didn't. The pit wall should have been told it was closed, and Hamilton just shouldn't have come in. And maybe there wasn't that notification to the teams that should have been there, because there was also a lot of teams that came out into the pit lane before they then didn't. Like the actual pit crew were waiting there. I don't know. Again, it's a very tricky subject, but obviously Hamilton did get the 10-second penalty, and at that point, this race just changed for everyone, I think, because as soon as that came up on the screen that Hamilton had that penalty, I was thinking, I literally have no idea who is going to win this race. I had no idea which way it was going to go. Was it going to go to... who was it? Stroll who was at the front? Stroll was in a perfect position to win the race.
Yeah, Stroll was at the front.
He had new tyres. He was ready to go. Was it going to go to Gasly behind him? Was it going to go to Sainz or Norris? I didn't know what was going to happen. And it all came down to lining up on that grid again and getting ready to go, didn't it?
I think the point that you made about the pit crews not knowing, just to go back on that real quick and then we'll go forward. I think the walls would have got told, the pit walls would have got told. They would have told the drivers, do not come into the pit lane's closed. Obviously, 12 seconds isn't as long as we think it is, you know what I mean? Like, it is long in F1 terms, but it's not that long. So if they've received that message, they can't really get on straight away. But I feel like the priority was to make sure that the drivers stayed out and not to tell the pit crew, stop doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because, it was easy, like, after a lap, they could have went, oh yeah, they're coming in now. Like the pit lane's reopened, so I think it was worth them keeping the pit crews there, just ready.
Yeah.
But moving on to what you just said, Stroll threw it away. Definitely, he absolutely bottled that start. and I have no idea how it happened.
Yeah, it was Stroll's race to lose, really, wasn't it? Stroll was lined up next to Hamilton right at the front. All he had to do was just get a good start, stay behind Hamilton, let Hamilton come in, and then just go to the end. And it would have been a Stroll's win, but it just didn't work like that. And I don't know if Stroll had a bad start or if Gasly just had an incredible start. But it was Pierre Gasly from this point on. And I don't think anyone tipped him to be a winner until this point. When he got the start there, he was just on it like a car bonnet. And he went for it. He wanted to get the win. And that's what he went and did, didn't it? It was a different kind of Gasly that I haven't seen before out there today. Or yesterday.
Yeah. I think as well, it was a very different Verstappen that we've seen. His engine failed after they restarted, didn't it? I'm pretty sure it was like a lap or 2 laps after.
Yeah.
He was having such a bad race, just absolutely lost it. And Gasly was just in such a perfect position just to take the win, really.
Absolutely. It was his to lose. And I think it was very exciting because no one quite knew what was going to happen. No one knew what was going to happen at the end of that race. It was so up in the air. It could have gone either way. It was Sainz, though, that was really wanting that win. He got on the radio, and I'm going to Reese have a little bit of a word about this because Sainz, he's one of your boys. How did you feel watching that?
Well, if the internet lets me talk them for more than 30 seconds, it was hard to watch because you cheer for the win, don't you? You really want your team to win.
Yeah.
And I've not seen a race where it's been that opportunity for McLaren to win, like in the new era, if you will, for McLaren to win. That was the perfect opportunity. If you would have told me at the start of the race weekend McLaren's finishing 2nd and 4th, I would have went, all right then, cheers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would have been like, I'll take that. I'll take that any day.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's the fact that Sainz had such a good race, like. He was the leader at one point. Hamilton pitted, and Sainz was the leader of the race at one point. Sainz should have completely. I want to say Sainz should have won it, but he shouldn't have won it. He should have came about 5th in that race, like realistically. You know what I mean? So 2nd is absolutely fantastic. You've got the social media guy on the McLaren social media trying to hype it up, being like, "We finished 2nd."
Yeah.
But everyone's kind of feeling a bit like.
It could have been the win. It could have been the win.
It feels like a loss. It feels like we had 2 DNFs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, even during the race, you kept saying, to be fair, I'm happy with 2nd. I'm happy to take 2nd. But I could tell there's just something in your voice where you were just saying that because you were worried you weren't going to win. And you were kind of just mentally preparing yourself for the fact that 2nd's great still. I should be happy with 2nd. But when push came to shove, you were like, yeah, 2nd, amazing, podium, but...
It was that last lap where he caught him. I was like, right, come on, get 2nd out your head.
Yeah.
He's got him here. And it just didn't happen. Sadly, It really didn't happen.
It was, very, very unfortunate.
But it was a good race nonetheless. 2nd feels like last. If you feel as though you should have won. You know what I mean? It's like if Lewis finished 2nd, he'd be absolutely, like, he wouldn't be happy, would he?
No.
And that's kind of how I felt that Sainz felt, even though he shouldn't have felt like that, he did.
Yeah.
So
I think it's so funny as well, like, you know, it's not like Sainz was about to go hop on a scooter after the race and go up to the FIA and say, hang on, this should have been my race, but he had such a good race and he was trying so hard to overtake.
Yeah.
So many laps, he was trying to get DRS. I think after the race as well, he even said, if I'd have just had one more lap.
Yeah. And I think
one
more
lap
lap
would have
done it.
It's so sad to hear that.
The thing is, though, the board came on the bottom of the screen saying catching time 6 laps. And that was on something like lap 42. So he should have caught him by about lap 48.
Yeah.
And that would have given him 4 laps to get the DRS to overtake.
I'm not quite sure what happened for Carlos there because he got very close and it did say that, and then he just kind of got stuck in the point where he was about 1.4, 1.6 seconds behind and he just couldn't get close enough until right on the last lap. He must have just, I don't know what he did, but he did an incredible job to get within a second, got the DRS and then got really close to him, but couldn't make it stick.
Realistically, if he did that from the 5th lap from the end,
he'd have done it.
We would have had a 1st and a 4th.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, he'd have done it, 100%. But in the
end...
I
think it shows as well in the fact that Gasly won the race, but Sainz was 0.5 4 seconds
Oh yeah,
behind Gasly at the end
they both
when they
did
crossed
such
the
a good
line.
job.
It was so close.
Yeah, 100%. But when push came to shove and when it came down to the end, it was Pierre Gasly that did win the race, as you just said. And I think we need to just give him a round of applause because he just did an incredible job today. He was flawless all race. And what?
Give him a round of applause.
Oh. He was flawless all race, and he just did such a good job. I mean, he's had a tough year, hasn't he, Pierre? And I think if anyone deserved that win, to be fair to him, it was him. Obviously, just over a year ago now, he lost Antoine Hubert. Then he got robbed. He got dropped from Red Bull. It's just been a dreadful year for him. It's just not gone well at all. And this win is the one he needed. I think he won it from... and this is the win he needed. Ruth, do you have a bit more details about the win that you could just give us?
Tom, that's a bit of an awkward handover.
The one right at the end where it says, I can't read it because I can't read that very well. Where it says, AlphaTauri driver Pierre Gasly claimed an unlikely victory.
Yeah, that's what I already read.
Did you?
When I said the times, yeah.
Yeah, but you haven't said that he was like the first winner since 1976 or whatever.
That's not on mine.
Oh. Okay, I thought that's what
you've added that in.
I haven't added it. I can't read blocks of text like that very quickly when reading off. But I thought that's what it said. Okay. But then I think Gasly, he deserved that win, and when it comes down to it.
Hold on. Why don't, instead of doing that, just be like, Reese, what did you think of the win? And then Ruth can get that fact about 1970 something.
Right. Okay.
Or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
I think he really deserved that win. Reese, I know you wanted Sainz to win that race. I know you wanted to go to Carlos. But how do you feel about Gasly winning that? Did he deserve it? What do you think?
It was hard to watch purely because Sainz was there. If anyone else was there, I would have been cheering Gasly. And I mean absolutely anyone else. But yeah, it was quite very well done. That's really all I can say. Well done. He deserved it. It's very nice to see after everything that's happened in this last year, especially being kicked off the Red Bull drivers team. He's not been kicked off the drivers team, obviously, but he got a demotion, which is never nice.
No.
I had a conversation with Mum about this, and I said to her, I want to see Gasly in the medal or something like that, or a Racing Point, something like that. He needs to get himself out of that Red Bull drivers program and just branch out somewhere else.
Yeah.
Even if it means not driving for a year. That drivers program is absolutely killing him.
I think, to be fair, as long as Max Verstappen is in that Red Bull team, then that Red Bull Junior program is pretty much defunct because no one's going to come through into that Red Bull team and take him off his top spot. Until there's a driver that can beat Verstappen, they're only interested in Verstappen. And I don't think Gasly's quite good enough to take it to Max yet. And I mean, it's sad to say that, but I think it's the truth that he's a great driver, but he's never going to make it in Red Bull. And that is the decision he has to make now. He has to realise where he's going to go. But, I mean, for this win, he deserves it 100%. And his future is something that's going to happen in the future. So we can talk about that when something more gets announced. But everyone was happy for him. I think no one was disappointed with Gasly for that win. You saw all the drivers coming over and give him a hug. You saw his fellow countryman, Romain Grosjean, going and, getting so excited for him on the radio. I don't think anyone could have been disappointed. What do you think about it, Ruth?
Well, I mean, it was just amazing for him as well. You could see how happy he was after the race, It was definitely a very, heartfelt moment for him. But I think, like you said, he is an amazing driver. He just needs to branch himself somewhere else. I mean, that was the second win in all of history for AlphaTauri. I mean, it wasn't AlphaTauri before it was Toro Rosso in 2008 with Vettel, who that's their only previous win under Toro Rosso or AlphaTauri. Gasly's their second win, and he's the first driver to have won a race since 2013 outside of Mercedes, Ferrari, or even Red Bull.
Yeah.
It's the first one, and it's just amazing, to be honest.
And I think as well for Grosjean and for all the French drivers in that race, it meant a lot to them as well because it was the first time a French driver has won since I think 1996 when Paris won it. Paris, something like that. The last French driver that won a F1 race. It was emotional for them, especially for Grosjean. He was really excited about it. Maybe not for Esteban Ocon. I think his post-team radio was a bit more aggressive. He was very unhappy that Renault didn't capitalise on what was available to him. But it was a great race either way. And there's a topic I want to ask here that Ross Brawn's kind of had a chat about afterwards, and that's about reverse grids. Now, we kind of saw what a reverse grid race might look like at Monza because we got all the big, good cars at the back. We saw that Mercedes at the back. We saw the less good cars at the front, and we got a great race from it. Do we think that reverse grids should be something that's considered? Should we see reverse grids once again in the sport, or for the first time in the sport?
No, absolutely not. I feel as though, I love qualifying the way it is. It's so exciting. Who can set the fastest lap? Obviously, Mercedes. But it's nice to just see, he's through to Q2, he's through, like sort of thing. I love qualifying. Qualifying's my favourite part of the race weekend, by a mile. I prefer qualifying over the race. I feel like having a reverse race, like, it'll be good. Like, don't get me wrong, it will be good. However,
what if they did qualifying how they do it already, but then the fastest car just goes to the back?
That's unfair, though, isn't it? No one's going to want to set a fast lap.
Well, you want to set a fast lap because then you have the fastest car for the race to get back to the front.
But no, that doesn't make sense. You know that doesn't make sense.
I think it would. I think it would make sense.
Lewis, you're saying that Lewis wouldn't back off on the last corner, knowing that he's already set a pretty decent lap, you know?
Well, yeah, because everyone wants to have the fastest lap, but also have the fastest car for the race ahead of them. And I think that would be very interesting because I'd be interested in that point to see.
Don't get me wrong, you're right to see the fastest car go through the pack. You're right.
Yeah.
However, my point is, what's stopping drivers from lifting off on the last corner so they don't set the fastest lap so that they go higher up the grid?
I suppose.
See what I mean?
I think it would be more interesting if on a race calendar they did, I don't know, two races with reverse grids out of all of the races. I think this showed exactly why reverse grids are definitely worth considering.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason Mercedes fought to not have reverse grids for so much was because it puts them at a disadvantage, and it's the only disadvantage that the Mercedes have.
Yeah.
Obviously, the engine change did not do anything to affect the Mercedes. The reverse grids are such a good idea to mix up a race and to mix up the pack. It gives other cars opportunities to perform better than they may do if the grid was how it normally is.
Yeah, I agree.
It would be interesting to see it once or twice.
Did they do reverse grid in F2?
In F2, they did it with the top 7 get reversed, yeah.
See, I'd stick with that. I'd be happy with that.
Yeah.
I feel like top 10 reverse is fine. But I wouldn't... You're Williams starting off at the front, you know... What are you doing then? Counting down the laps until they get right back to the back?
Yeah, so how they do it in F2 is quite interesting. They have they have a qualifying session and they have 2 races. So they have the qualifying, which decides for the feature race, and then they do the feature race, and then the top 7 from the feature race gets swapped round. So the car that finished 7th starts first for the sprint race, and then they do that straight to the end. And that is very interesting to watch, to be fair. And I think that is a good thing that works. But then they'd have to do 2 races per weekend, which is probably more trickier.
I feel as though that it's not plausible for F1 to be able to do it. I think maybe, I don't know, like, I feel like the top 3 cars are close enough to each other. Well, obviously Mercedes are out there. But I feel like they're close enough to each other that they've all got the same kind of advantage, if you will. The mid-pack are always all bunched together. It'll be so hard to do it.
I think I just disagree because I think a reverse grid forces front teams like Mercedes to have to race with other teams. It gives other teams the opportunity that they don't normally have. Mercedes lead every race. It's just a common known fact. Mercedes usually win majority of races, but when you have a reverse grid, we saw how much they struggled. We saw Bottas was not happy in his car.
Yeah.
Neither was Hamilton. It's it's a different kind of race when you have a reverse grid. I completely understand that, but I think it just would benefit F1 much more if they at least tried it for one race.
See,
I think
I think it would work if you say, look, Italy, Great Britain, and Brazil are going to be reverse grid.
Yeah.
Let's see how that works.
Not every race.
However, qualifying's good because, you've got to settle down, get the fastest lap. You know what I mean? I love qualifying. It gets me adrenaline going because it's like, who's in the bottom 5 sort of thing.
Right, well, that's a great debate, and I think it will be very interesting to see which direction Formula One go. And I think Ross Brawney said he's going to take a look at it, and they will evaluate it again, because if it will work, I think, and if they implement it well, it will be very interesting to watch. So it'll be interesting to see what decision they come to on that, and obviously we'll come back to that. This has been a long episode today. We've had a lot to talk about, and we have shoved it all in. So I think it's time we round it out. We're just going to round it up now just by having a quick chat about Mugello. This weekend, we're going to be going to Mugello, whatever the hell it's called. It's Ferrari's home circuit. It's the circuit they build their cars for. What are we predicting the results are going to be here? We'll start with Ruth. What do you think?
I have to say, just before I do my prediction, I'm very upset because normally I would predict that something would happen to a Mercedes here. And last week would have been my perfect opportunity
it's true.
to have crystal balled ahead and got it right for once. But I think teams will definitely be much more well adjusted to the engines, and how the engines were affected this race is definitely going to influence this next race.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see teams recovering much better. I think last week's race, it just wasn't it for majority of the teams, but I think this race they'll know how to do it. And for that reason I'm thinking Mercedes, as much as it pains me to say it, will be a 1-2. And
who's that third spot though?
It's the third spot that I always get stuck on, because part of me wants to say that it'll be a Red Bull, but part of me thinks that it'll be a McLaren.
I'm kind of thinking McLaren too.
Or a Racing Point.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Reese, what do you reckon?
Mercedes 1-2. Both Ferraris to be in the top 10, but like 9th and 10th.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, not high top 10, but I think way too embarrassing for them to be that low down, especially in the home circuit.
Yeah.
I reckon someone's gonna drill a hole in a compartment to make it go faster. You know what I mean? They're gonna cheat. It's the home circuit. They're gonna look like absolute idiots if
they're
they
just
mess
going
up
to
the
be
home
changing
circuit.
the engine the whole time.
No, genuinely, I reckon something's going to come out after this next weekend. If Ferrari do well, as in top 10 well, someone's going to come out this next weekend saying Ferrari cheated. Because I can guarantee that they don't want to look like that much of idiots in their home Grand Prix.
So Reese's prediction is that Ferrari are going to cheat.
Ferrari cheats, but they only get 9th and 10th. And then I'm going to say both Mercedes 1-2. I'm going to give the win to Bottas, though, not Hamilton.
Oh.
Just because I want to see that happen personally. And I'm going to say Perez gets third. I reckon McLaren's will come 4th and 5th.
Interesting. Right. Well, I think.
Wait, no.
Oh.
4th and 5th. I reckon McLaren's will come 6th and 7th, and then obviously Red Bulls and stuff.
It's all right. I did ask for your top 3, so thank you. I think that it's going to probably be a Mercedes 1-2 once again, and I think third we're going to see that McLaren. I think McLaren are going to get there, and I think they're going to do it. Red Bull looked like the engine modes have just ruined them. Last weekend, not having those extra engine modes did really look like Honda have just kind of taken a big step backwards. So I'm interested to see what happens next week, and if Red Bull can come back from it. But right now, I think it's McLaren that are kind of in that spot, fighting for those podium positions, and I really hope we see some good stuff from that. Anyway, I'll round it up because I think Reese is about to go and pick a fight with the Router. He's not had a good podcast. He's in a very grumpy mood, but we love him nevertheless. Thank you very much for watching today's episode of the F1 Rearview podcast. I've been Tom, as always.
I've been producer Ruth, as always. And
Reese is frozen again. Perfect. He's throwing his microphone away. No one knows what he's saying. We'll see you next time. Bye.